this is the Democratic Party's version of the Tea Party. It's an anti-establishment movement, and it's on the far left. And the establishment of the party has sucked for a long time, just like the Republican Party establishment did. So no, this is going to continue. And let's be real, a big issue driving all of this is Israel. The Democratic Party increasingly is becoming an anti-Israel party.
Now, let us talk about America. In November, we are on Times Radio Drive heading to the United States to cover the midterm elections. Ahead of that big moment for the second Trump administration, we have now in Michigan today the progressive left-winger Abdul El-Sayed winning Michigan's Democratic Senate primary. He will then be the party's runner for the Senate seat of Michigan. And here he is speaking after that victory.
I want to say, just first and foremost, how grateful I am for the opportunity to participate in democracy. Now, my family immigrated to this country from a place where there is not democracy. You cannot just put your hand up and run. And the ability to do this, to have our voices heard, to select our leaders, it is a gift that sometimes we take for granted. So to have participated means so much. And to my fellow participants, I just want to say how grateful I am to you.
That is the victorious now candidate for the Senate seat in Michigan. Now, the Democrat James Talarico is also, meanwhile, leading the polls in Texas, a former absolutely strong Republican seat against the opponent there, Ken Paxton. Let's talk about all of that with Joe Walsh, who is a former Republican congressman, now a Democrat. And Joe, welcome to the program.
Good to be with you, John, as always. I don't know how long I'll be a Democrat, but it's good to be with you.
Interesting thought. Is that a reaction to what's going on in the Democrat Party, Joe, when you see the sort of progressive left-wing wing of that party in the ascendant in some of these primary seats, contests?
Well, yeah, the party has definitely, the energy is on the left, and it's hurtling full down that road on the left. I didn't become a Democrat because of policy. I became a Democrat because I believe my former party is a threat to democracy and the rule of law. But look, I'm not where the party is on these votes and these issues. And the guy we nominated in the state of Michigan, he and I probably disagree on everything, but that's where the party is today.
Right, and is that the case, Joe, in your assessment? Is the Democrat Party clearly swinging to the left on the evidence of the primary contests that we've seen so far? Or are these, case by case, you see a movement there, maybe not here? Is this a general trend, which you clearly deplore?
No, it's a general trend, John. Look, I come from the Tea Party. This is the Democratic Party's version of the Tea Party. It's an anti-establishment movement, and it's on the far left. And the establishment of the party has sucked for a long time, just like the Republican Party establishment did. So no, this is going to continue. And let's be real, a big issue driving all of this is Israel. The Democratic Party increasingly is becoming an anti-Israel party.
Okay, I mean, there has been an awful lot of discussion on those lines. What does it mean to American voters, in your judgment, Joe? The midterms are now pretty close. Is this going to seriously diminish the Democrats' chances of making the gains they so badly need to make when it comes to voting in November?
John, it really could. Look, Democrats should have a huge year. Why? Just because of Trump. Trump. Everything Trump's done. People are crawling, John, naked across broken glass to vote against Trump. Now, the only thing that can interfere with that is if Democrats nominate some far left crazy folks who advocate stuff where most Americans aren't. Look at Michigan, John. Yeah. This Abdul El-Sayed, who won the state of Michigan, he's going to have a really hard time winning in November, whereas this should be a year Democrats should win Michigan going away.
Okay, really fascinating thoughts from you on that. And what about James Talarico in Texas? Now, here is a Democrat who leads the polls in this deep red state. What do you make of that? Are you in any way celebrating that? Or is that, again, about special circumstances in the state of Texas?
No, and John, I would be so careful about polls. Most of the polls heading into Michigan yesterday had Abdul El-Sayed way up by double digits, and he barely won.
Yeah.
So I would take those polls right now in Texas with a grain of salt. Texas is still Texas. Tallarico is going to have a real difficult time winning, even though he's running against a horrible candidate. As this thing gets closer to November, most Republicans will come home and vote Republican.
All right, fascinating thoughts. We will obviously need to watch very, very carefully. Tell me, Joe, are you really going to leave the party over all of this?
John, I can't tell a lie. It was always my fatal flaw as a politician. When I joined the Democratic Party, I knew in my heart it was always going to be temporary. I wanted to help Democrats fight back against my former party. I don't know how long I'll be a Democrat, maybe until tomorrow, maybe until after the midterms, but it's clearly not a permanent situation.
All right, well, maybe we should keep on in touch on that as well. Joe Walsh, thank you so much for joining me. Now, Terry Stiastny is here with me, the political correspondent, and Mikey Smith from The Mirror. So let's go back to the politics in the moving politics in the United States just at the moment. As we were telling you earlier on, the Democrat on the progressive left side of the Democrat Party, Abdul El-Sayed, won Michigan's Democratic Senate primary. He will fight Michigan for a seat in the U.S. Senate for the Democrat Party. And here he is speaking after his victory.
I want to say, just first and foremost, how grateful I am for the opportunity to participate in democracy. Now, my family immigrated to this country from a place where there is not democracy. You cannot just put your hand up and run. And the ability to do this, to have our voices heard, to select our leaders, it is a gift that sometimes we take for granted. So to have participated means so much. And to my fellow participants, I just want to say how grateful I am to you.
So that was the winner in Michigan. He will fight for the Democrats for the United States Senate. Meanwhile, quite a different story, but still a fascinating one in the red state of Texas, the Republican state of Texas, where the Democrat runner is leading the polls against the highly controversial Republican Ken Paxton. When I spoke to Joe Walsh, he's a former Republican congressman who's now a Democrat, well, certainly for the time being. He said he didn't know how long he would be in the party.
The energy is on the left, and it's hurtling full down that road on the left. I didn't become a Democrat because of policy. I became a Democrat because I believe my former party is a threat to democracy and the rule of law. But look, I'm not where the party is on these votes and these issues. And the guy we nominated in the state of Michigan, he and I probably disagree on everything, but that's where the party is today.
Now, that's Joe Walsh, who's outspoken, really speaks his mind. Been on this show a number of times, always good to talk to. Got to be said that Joe Walsh, he joined the Democratic Party as a kind of temporary expedient. It was about taking on Donald Trump for him, and he made that very clear when I spoke to him again a couple of hours ago. He wants to see off Donald Trump. At that point, maybe he would think he's done his bit and it's out of the Democrat Party, but he's very upset about what he sees as this lurch to the left in what is presently, for the time being, his party. And that's now a big open question. Two big open questions. Is this a lurch to the left? Is it going to sweep through the party? And to whatever the answer to that may turn out to be, will it stop the Democrats making the gains they might have expected to make, given that the GOP, the Republicans are tanking, and especially Donald Trump? Mikey.
Okay, it is a lurch to the left for American politics. This is not a Corbyn-style socialism utopia. This is a slight, centre-left a realignment of the Democratic Party. Socialised healthcare, rent controls, things like this that are not, terribly, no one. Donald Trump keeps calling them communists. Communists, they are not.
They're not communists, but I mean, someone like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is pretty left-wing. She is pretty left-wing, but she's also quite. I mean, she's not a hardliner. You wouldn't. She seems like quite a moderate character. She doesn't feel like a trot on the barricades. She's quite a smooth. She's a politician for a start, which you often find people on the hard left of parties tend not to be. These are
candidates. Whether it's going to sweep through the party and through the election is another question. It's not been entirely smooth sailing. In Maine, there was an issue with the candidate Graham Platner, who was selected and had to step down. There were really high hopes for him. He was a really interesting guy, but he had some issues in his past. He had some accusations of sexual assault, which he denies. He had a tattoo which was of a I believe it was a Luftwaffe symbol.
He says he also says he's a reformed character.
A reformed character. Well, he says he was, a Marine at the time, and he was drunk and he didn't know what he was getting, and he's now covered it up. Anyway, after all of this, he had to step down, and there was a bit of upheaval in the race, and what had been a race that the Democrats were really, really hoping that they might win. It's less certain. Texas is really interesting as well, but the problem has been with this, as well as the move with the Democratic Socialists of America, which is Zoran Mamdani's sort of wing of the party, which has done really well in selections in New York and elsewhere. There has been this push for candidates who are a bit rough and ready. Like Platner. Platner was a sort of a working class blue collar guy, and the problem was that they didn't adequately do the background checks, and there's a strategy team behind this push to select these kind of candidates, which is facing a little bit of pushback since this all went wrong. So there's still a little bit of upheaval in the party. It's not a smooth shift to the left.
The Texas story is fascinating, isn't it? In itself, to have a Tallarico. I think the poll that I saw this morning, he was 3 points ahead, and for a Democrat runner, that's in Texas. That really is something. It's been decades since the Democrats had Texas for the in a statewide race for the U.S. Senate. But there he is. He's facing a candidate in Ken Paxton who is, again, quite a character. This is a guy who's been accused of fraud, of all sorts of profound wrongdoing. He did community service for one set of a bit of misconduct, and so much else. He's an election denier too, but that's standard for someone with the favour of the president. However, is that going to endure? I mean, Joe Walsh did not think it would. He said, for one thing, and maybe he had a point here, don't take the polls necessarily too seriously, because the polls did not predict what was going to happen in Michigan.
That's true. I think there is a disconnect in the Republican selection process this time round, though, which is that Ken Paxton, when he won his primary, he did that with the backing of Donald Trump. He was endorsed by Donald Trump, and that works brilliantly in primaries, and it is entirely unclear whether that will follow through into a general election. Yes. Whether the Trump-backed candidate will be the one that people vote for. I suspect, with Donald Trump's approval rating now sitting around 39%, which is the lowest of either of his terms in office, which I believe, and I'm happy to be corrected, I believe that makes it the lowest approval rating of any president since they started doing approval ratings. I would be very surprised if him being the MAGA candidate wasn't hurting him, even in Texas. I was in Texas a couple of months ago, and you could kind of tell in the party that they weren't confident.
Interesting.
I think one of the interesting things here for sort of the Democratic establishment, if you like, is, they need to think about what is the appeal of these candidates. Is it a policy thing? Is it because people like ideas about rent control or whatever? Or is it that they are somehow better at communicating with the audience? I mean, I remember thinking that Mamdani, I thought he sounds too extreme for even a New York electorate, and then suddenly he sort of swept the board. And if you look at the way that he in particular has used social media, he's done his communications, he, videos of him talking with little children saying that, we're getting rid of bedtime for the New York Knicks games, things like that, which are, they're a brilliant popular touch. I mean, you might think they're a bit cringy, but it does seem to take the sting out of the idea that you could suggest that this man is a dangerous radical, because there he is with, Obama singing "The Wheels on the Bus." He doesn't come across like that. So, I think that maybe the Democrats strategist needs to think, what has gone wrong that our more established candidates are being rejected like this, and that is key to understanding, how you're going to win another election.
Right. I'm going to transition now to our final discussion. When you share your thoughts for the future, I'll come to you first, Mikey, with this, because you've got an American-based thought for the future. So what is that?
Yes, my thought for the future is this evening, Donald Trump is giving a speech in Las Vegas, which you wouldn't necessarily think was an unusual thing. It's a few months out from the midterms, and of course he's going to be giving rally speeches. The thing is, he's been to Vegas recently. He was last there, I think, in April, and he gave a rally speech there. And I think a few months before that, he gave a rally speech in Vegas. He keeps going back to Nevada. And I think the reason for this is that the team around him, particularly Susie Wiles, are trying to get him on message. And the one policy that he still polls well on is the no tax on tips policy.
Yes.
It's the only thing he's got left in his arsenal. And they've tried twice since January, if I'm remembering correctly. They've tried twice since January to get him to go to Vegas and say, everybody within the sound of my voice, you get paid largely in tips, and I'm not going to tax those, and then shut up. And he's failed on both of those occasions. He's given these really wild speeches.
Donald Trump does not stop talking.
Imagine that. But so I think this is take 3 of that. This is him going to Vegas, which, I mean, incidentally, Vegas has a huge immigrant population. If Donald Trump carried through on his threats of mass deportation, Las Vegas would fall into the desert. It's not as simple as I'm going to give you a tax break, but it's his best shot at sort of relaunching this messaging that he is capable of running the economy, and Republicans can be trusted to run the economy.
And it is a battleground state, Nevada, isn't it?
It is.
And when it comes to midterms, it's going to be so interesting to see that state, apart from projecting it forward to the presidential election, as you say, the demographic of Nevada, when you look at how people are responding to Donald Trump's migration policy, the ICE enforcement agency, all of those things.
See, this is exactly the argument I make to my editors when I say, I really want to go back to Vegas.
I'm sure they buy it every time.
Every time they're like, yeah, all right, maybe next time. Right.